This is the On the Touchline podcast. We're your host, Jason Broadwater
and Aaron Rogers.
Welcome to the show.
So I started this podcast about a year ago, and if you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. So it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on places like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. And the cool thing, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's Anchor, ANCHOR.FM to get started. What's up, guys? Welcome to 2020 in the On the Touchline podcast. I hope everyone had a great holiday season, and I hope your new year is off to a great start. And you've had a chance to watch a lot of football or soccer since the last time that we spoke. Our first guest in 2020 is John Krysinsky. And John covers soccer locally for Pittsburgh Soccer Now. And Pittsburgh Soccer Now is a website dedicated to covering the game in all aspects locally here in the Pittsburgh area, where I call home. So John does a fantastic job covering everything from the high school level game here locally all the way up to the professional game in the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, and also does an excellent job with their college coverage of some of the local colleges and universities here in the Pittsburgh area. I was first turned on to John's work probably about a year ago, and as I entered into the high school game here locally, I was looking for a source or a place where I could find match write-ups or the coverage that I was kind of craving, not only as a coach, but as a fan of local high school sports, especially soccer. And John's team does a fantastic job, better than most, if not all the media outlets locally, of actually paying attention to the game and giving some really in-depth coverage that is lacking and needed, I think, locally here to grow the game. So was instantly drawn to Pittsburgh Soccer Now and what they do. So I've included a link in the show notes that if you want to go check out their work, you can definitely do that. Also included John's Twitter bio, that be sure to give him a follow as well. This conversation takes a lot of turns and twists. We talk about the Pittsburgh Riverhounds and how they've sort of managed to survive over the last 20 years and some of the challenges they've had, but seem to be on a little bit more firmer ground here going into the new year. I also found it really fascinating of John's coaching career. John worked at his alma mater, then Point Park College, now Point Park University, as their first coach. And he shares what it was like training players and working with players in that role in the college game. And some really great insight, some pretty fantastic stories, some funny stories that he shares as part of this episode. And last but not least, I had mentioned John's coverage of the high school game locally. If you pay attention to high school soccer throughout the country, I think you'll want to listen to that part of this episode with great detail. And I say that because Pennsylvania has some really weird rules when it comes to officiating high school matches. And we get into a pretty lively discussion of why a lot of these things are, quite frankly, just archaic and have expired in terms of their usefulness. Yet there isn't a willingness from the governing bodies to really change as much as they probably should or could to make the game a little bit better, not only for coaches, but for the players and for the referees, quite frankly, themselves. So before we get into this episode with John, you can find this podcast on all major podcasting platforms. So whatever podcasting platform you prefer, please be sure to subscribe to the show. That way you will never miss a new episode. And it is a new year, and we hope to have a little bit more sustainability in terms of getting episodes out throughout most of 2020. So we'll be putting new episodes out every Wednesday starting next week. So the first full week of the new year. And you subscribe to the show, you'll never miss a new episode. Also, too, if you listen to the show on Apple Podcast, it really means a lot to Aaron and I that if you have a chance to leave us a 5-star rating and a brief review about the show. It just takes all of 30 seconds to write a few sentences about different aspects of the show that you might enjoy, and helps grow the show when people search soccer or football podcast, that the On the Touchline podcast comes up quickly for them. And last but not least, if you want to connect with Aaron and I on social media, we would love that as well. You can find him at Ohio Soccer Coach on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find me at Soccer Coach JB on the same platforms as well. Enjoy the first episode of the new year. Episode 11 of Season 3, and our guest, John Krysinsky. Very much appreciate, what the work you and, the supporting staff you have at Pittsburgh Soccer Now, just because, Pittsburgh still, or soccer in this area is a bit of it's gotten better, and Aaron and I were talking a little bit about this earlier today, that, it's crazy to think that the Riverhounds have been around 20 years, but people, I think, are finally more in than they were. I don't know if I'd say that they're all in, but, you saw it at the playoff game or games this past season. You saw the atmosphere around Highmark. I think things are starting to change a little bit, and I think that's great, for my kids, as they get a little bit older, to have an authentic soccer and, football, I'm sort of use those terms interchangeably, culture. And, I can't get enough of it. So.
Yeah, I could say the same thing. Obviously, it started as a small venture for me, just covering Riverhounds games once Highmark Stadium opened.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing I knew, I, within a couple of years, had started my own site and wanted to do more, wanted to provide something where the soccer fans in our area had a little bit more in-depth coverage, had something where, looking all around, you could see, I followed a lot of the good soccer writers in and around the country and thought I could do, I'd like to provide something like that for the Pittsburgh area. And with my background in journalism and communications and having a soccer background, I thought it would be a great way to kind of put all of that together. And so first started Pittsburgh Soccer Report in 2015. And then that we merged with the Pittsburgh Sports Now kind of group to create Pittsburgh Soccer Now in 2018. It's since starting Soccer Report and Soccer Now in the past, year and a half, almost 2 years now. It's it's like everything else in the Pittsburgh soccer landscape. But you talked about the Riverhounds getting to that point where they're getting a little bit more recognition. The sport in the area is starting to grow. I think it's been incremental. Particularly, there was a little bit of a boost when Highmark Stadium was, 2013, when Highmark Stadium was finally opened, and there was a bit of a buzz that first year, but then it really plateaued for Riverhounds in terms of attendance. But everything else just sort of incrementally, in terms of the rest of the soccer, I don't know how to say it, just everybody else, I think interest started to grow in all the other areas. And I think one of the nice things about Highmark Stadium is it's sort of served as this mecca, this central, this kind of place where everybody has had some sort of games played there. It's very unique in that it's been the central focal point for Pittsburgh soccer's growth in the past really 6 or 7 years, and you could see it too. I mean, there's been obviously the WPIL finals are played there every year. The NCAA Division II championships were played as well. So I think there's a significance to Highmark Stadium, but it hasn't been the sole thing that's kind of where we've seen that growth. But we've seen Pitt improve its facilities and create Ambrose Urbanic Field as part of the Peterson Sports Complex, and that is just a beautiful facility and a gem and a recruiting tool for both Pitt coaches to get some of the best players in the country to come and play at Pitt now, which 5 or 6 years ago is unheard of. So all of these things are happening, and it's just this incremental growth. And there's a lot of resources now. There's a lot of great coaches. These things, I don't think. I mean, there were good coaches, and there was a lot of history. You know, that's the one thing that people don't realize maybe about Pittsburgh is that Pittsburgh has. I mean, if you go way back in the annals of American soccer history, Pittsburgh has especially at the turn of the 20th century with all the immigrants, there was a lot of really good soccer teams and amateur level teams that were at the top, competing for Open Cups and things like that. But obviously, so many changes in the city's history and the region's history of and football and some of the other sports becoming what they became. Soccer then kind of took a back seat, but it's just a fascinating history, and like you said, it's hard to believe the Riverhounds have been around for 20 years, but I feel like the Riverhounds have been there's been 3 stages of their history. One of the key points for them was when the developmental academy started in 2007, and that the influence that had over the again, talking about incremental growth, they started pretty slowly, doing a lot more instructional and educational type stuff, more technical training, and I kind of pointed to Aaron, just kind of say, like, you could probably see the the level of players, the number of players that were coming out of Western Pennsylvania after that, and there's other really terrific clubs, Beadling and Century and some others, but the growth of more clubs have really risen in the last decade. But I think the Riverhounds Academy, I think, stepped up. They made everybody else kind of step up their game, and it got a little bit more competitive in this area, and I think that contributed.
Yeah, I mean, Beadling, I mean, I mean, I'm from Texas, and I mean, you knew Beadling when I was growing up and playing in the late 80s and early 90s in youth soccer. You knew Beadling, and Beadling's obviously still around and a very successful and good club with a lot of history. But as you said, it probably upped the ante for everybody else to get their game going on, because they got a new person in town, or a new group in town that's pushing that level higher and higher. And that rising tide raises all the ships, and it's really great for Pittsburgh for sure.
So, John, you're I think I read that you grew up in Long Island, New York, and that you have a bit of a coaching background. And this being a soccer coaching podcast, that I think probably important to hit that. So, tell folks a little bit about your coaching background.
Sure. Nothing too much to brag about, but I got into the game in a very unique way. I was a traditional 3-sport athlete growing up on Long Island. Baseball, basketball, football player. Soccer was always there. We had a lot of. I mean, it was one of those areas where you could grow up and you could go outside and you could find a game. And even in the 1970s, and I think actually growing up in New York and Long Island in the 1970s, you had that influence. You had the New York Cosmos, you had Pele. So there was, Joe Chinala. There was that. There was enough there. It was kind of an exciting time. There, and of course we had the New York Arrows with 4 straight MISL titles. So as the New York Islanders were winning their titles, we had the Arrows. So there was definitely a soccer influence there, and I loved the game. I liked playing my high school didn't have a soccer team, but we had a football team. I love football, and my dad played college football, so but baseball was my main sport. In fact, I was recruited to play baseball at Point Park University. Actually, way back then, it was Point Park College.
Mm-hmm.
Had the opportunity I did, go to Point Park my freshman year, played a little bit of baseball, but I was really into the whole journalism thing. Did a lot with that my first few years. As the story goes, my sophomore year, I'm covered. Point Park had started its soccer program, and I kind of went along for the ride and started covering the team. And next thing you know, they had a terrible first season, but I was recruited to play, kind of help fill in numbers, and it was part of the program for a couple of years, and it was fun and it was great, and I would say it was a great experience. It was awesome to play with. Point Park had a lot of international students, and being a very small school, an NAIA school, there was a little bit of room to recruit and to get scholarship players and things like that, but the program was just we hadn't won a game for my first 2 years. I only played 2 years, but so I went on with got graduated and got some jobs in media and public relations and doing different things. And about 4 or 5 years later, after I graduated from Point Park, the coaching position came open. The AD knew who I was. He knew I was like the super organized type person. I was really, I guess I had some, background in coaching, a little bit of background in coaching, maybe youth level and some stuff, soccer and basketball, but nothing extensive. But I think he was just looking for somebody who was, very well organized, and could recruit, and that was my strength. I'll say it. I had a good couple assistant coaches, and we made the most of it. And my first year at Point Park was our first winning season we ever had as a program. We made the NAIA playoffs. We beat some ranked teams, and we did that for 3 years, and it was an awesome experience for me as a mid-20-year-old, to be able to step in and do that. And that's really when I felt. Ironically, this is not going to be a traditional tale, but it was still, the wild, wild west days of soccer in America, I think. And I think in some respect, we still are in those days. We're still growing. We're still trying to figure things out as a nation, as a soccer nation. So that was a time where someone like myself, who was a decent athlete, who knew the game, but didn't know it at the level of probably somebody like Aaron, and I hadn't played it as a youth player, didn't have the technical background, but anyway, just got involved in the game and found a way to continue doing that. And so after that third year, my second son was born, and there was no way. I had I had a 4-year-old and a newborn, and I had a really great opportunity to take a job as a competition director for Special Olympics in Pennsylvania, statewide games, with soccer being an emphasis, and running soccer state tournaments and all of that. So I took advantage of that job and did that. And unfortunately, I didn't coach then at that level ever again, but I did have the opportunity to get back into youth coaching, and then I coached at the high school level for a few years once my kids were older, at North Catholic, and then at Shady Side Academy. So that's my background.
I think that well, tell me what you were like as a coach, in terms of your demeanor, or sort of how you approached. You mentioned about being organized, and that being a strength of recruiting athletes, and just your overall how you approach your work. But tell me a little bit about what were you like at your training session or on match day, and I find myself sort of very hands-on in terms of training sessions, a lot of instruction points, a lot of chatter, a lot of talking. I tend to be a little bit more quiet, on match days. And not that I completely sit on my hands and watch a match go by, But, unless there's something completely haywire, I'm more observant, make my coaching points, maybe at halftime or something like that. And I wonder what you were like when you were sort of in the trenches.
Great question. I'll definitely say in my younger years, actually when I was coaching at the collegiate level, I really leaned on my staff and the people who um, had had extensive knowledge in terms of training, the day-to-day things. I think we were really, really big on short-sided games and just letting our guys get touches and um, those type of things. I think when you're at the collegiate level, I think the technical, even again, this is 25 years ago, 20 some years ago, that we felt that the guys were at that point technically as technically proficient as they could be. I think that side of the game, I think, can always use improvement. And there were different things we would do, drills and whatnot. But I think we spent a lot of time. We needed to get to know the guys. Sometimes it's hard to bring a lot of guys together from all over the world in a short period of time. And so just getting those short-sided games and just seeing them work together, um, that was our forte. I mean, it really was. Um, and I had Graf Kolinkowski, who he's coaching at Plum now. It was his first year he ever coached was as my assistant at Plum High School. He's did an outstanding job this year. He's also coached a number of clubs in and around the area. So I learned a lot from Graf. I had some, I had that going, and not only that, I felt like providing the sense of um, stability in terms of being consistent in terms of our practices, our schedules, our fields. I mean, we're sitting here trying to approach going to games and things like that. With Point Park's program, the truth was we needed stability. We needed to be at the same practice field. We didn't have our own practice field. It was just those little things I think made a difference in terms of the players from the previous years that I had inherited. They were used to like, oh, well, this day we're practicing on this field and this day we're practicing on that. I mean, this is where we were at that time. Where we've come so far in such a long period of time to be able to bring stability to that program and have the same kind of routine. So one of the most unique things we did in training was our practice field is on Mount Washington in Pittsburgh. So Point Park was located in downtown Pittsburgh. So one of the things we did was we had our training run every morning during the first 2 weeks of camp was to run from Point Park University in downtown Pittsburgh across Liberty Bridge and up McCardle Roadway, which is to the top of Mount Washington. And the field is probably not even a half mile from that point. So it was somewhere around it wasn't that long. It was like about a 2-some-mile run. But even my son now talk about that. They tell everybody about what their dad used to do in terms of cardiovascular training for the players. But yeah, we ran every 5 up Mount Washington every morning for practice. We went pretty hard conditioning for about an hour or so. So it was a real big believer. We didn't have a lot of numbers weren't great, so we had to keep the guys healthy. We were somewhere between 15 and 17 players if all was going well, and somehow managed to have winning teams. Obviously nowadays, but no, conditioning was very, very important. Short-sided games, very, very key. In-game adjustments, like you said, I'm not a big believer in, not like Bob Lilly trying to orchestrate everything throughout the course of the game. Whereas at halftime, we can sit and we can talk about soccer is a difficult sport to do that during the run of play. I have a huge basketball background, so and I think basketball coaches micromanage way too much. I think my philosophy is more, let those short-sided games, playing the game, knowing your base. Know what you're going to do that day in terms of tactics and just, you can adjust on the fly at halftime and make changes here or there. But I don't know. I just think it's one of those. I just have been a big proponent of letting your players play. And And I was I'm sorry, I'm rambling a lot, but I was very, very fortunate also to have some outstanding leadership on the field. I was a 20-some-year-old coach, 24, 5 years old, and I had a 34-year-old captain from Scotland who, again, he was like a third coach. So, of course, that really helped. So.
Yeah. Well, interesting you mentioned Raf. Actually saw Raf, and he coaches now with Pittsburgh Hotspurs, and actually shook his hand last Friday. We were both at the same training session. He was with a different group, and what a small world, right? And talk about a guy that you feel you can lean on. I mean, he's got quite a pedigree, locally. So, and it's been cool to get to know him a little bit. I don't know him exceptionally well, but yeah, neat to hear sort of the connectivity of all that. Aaron, bring you into this in terms of, some of your experiences.
Well, I think I just had to make a comment. So you would run from downtown Pittsburgh to Mount Washington, and you didn't take the incline?
Nope. I could take the incline, but the players would.
Yeah, that's awesome. We actually played at Pitt in the 2018 season, and so obviously you were talking about the facilities at Pitt, and we got to play on that field. That is a great place. It's a great place to play a game, and really happy for Randy Waldrum and them doing their thing over there. But yeah, we took the players up the incline on our day off, and we got to look out like every tourist in Pittsburgh probably does. But it was really cool. And I can't imagine running up that hill after or before training. That's crazy. So you were fit, and you were able to run for 90 minutes. One of the things that you said, and it's really kind of appropriate for today, Jurgen Klopp was interviewed last week, I think, and he said the exact same thing that you just said. He said that he surrounds himself with the smartest coaches that he can get around him. And I mean, and that's what great leaders do. And you obviously were aware enough to think, well, maybe I'm not as strong in this area or this area, but I'm going to bring the right people in to do that. And I think that's amazing. I mean, I try to do the same thing. Listen, I'm just as good as the people around me, and I want to bring people in that are smarter than me because that makes me look smarter if I got people smarter than me. So I think that's awesome, and I think that's a really important thing for any coach, and especially young coaches coming up to not be too proud of your own abilities, but recognize can you enhance what you can do by bringing somebody else in that may complement what you do. And that's awesome. One of the things that you said that stuck with me as well was structure and consistency. And that's what you thought Point Park needed at the time, was that to make that team successful. And there's so much in college coaching that goes into just providing that consistency and that structure for these players, because you're right. Hopefully you're recruiting the right players and they have the tactical ability, and you're just putting them in an environment that they can flourish. And they can't do that without structure and consistency. And so one of the things that I'm so big on just passion and finding the joy of the game. What took you back to coaching? I mean, you obviously must have had a passion for soccer if you would leave a career in public relations, journalism, and go. And I can't imagine you were making a ton of money as the head coach there.
No, it was. To be honest, I mean, quite frankly, I was part-time coach, and full-time. I had full-time work around that. But
gotcha.
Again, those are the days of the Wild Wild West when you couldn't afford to NAIA school. There were high school coaches making more money than most high school now, but it was comparable to a lot of high school coaching jobs, pay-wise, somewhere in that ballpark. I mean, so yeah, it was a challenge. I mean, before I got there, I think Pittsburgh Park had 5 coaches in 5 years, and then I was there for 3. So there's your stability. I think that was, and the thing was, is one of my strengths too. There, at least there, as it was a good way for me to, obviously got really in tune with the game at that point, and got to know a lot more about, how to coach and kind of wet my feet, for lack of a better word. Just kind of really got involved in it at that point. But um, I think that, I don't know. I did that opportunity gave me a chance to kind of see some of my strengths that I didn't know I had, and I think that was great. And I think other people saw that, and that was really good. And I talked earlier too briefly about the recruiting aspect of it. And that's something that as a college coach, that's very unique. And look, I've spent 2.5 hours sitting and talking to Bob Lilly last week and as the Riverhounds coach. There's some recruiting at that level as well. It's different, but it's definitely recruiting as well. But um, there's something to be said for that as well. I think young people want to play somewhere where they could, they can have a really great college experience or a really great experience as a player. So sometimes now, like you're recruiting at the club level because you're going to promote and talk about a positive experience that it's so competitive and there's money involved and there's all these different things going on. And, I think people will make an investment if it's something that they believe in. And I felt like I could talk to young players at that time in my life and be able to say, this if you come here and be a part of this program, we can do something really special. And I use Point Park, the downtown Pittsburgh, as our campus, motto. And some people love, if there was a young person who wanted something that non-traditional, a little bit of a non-traditional college experience, but being in a thriving metropolitan area, it struck a chord with a number of kids. And we also had some international. We had some significant success in my time recruiting a number of international students with help from our international department. 3 players from Brazil really just turned our program around in 1998. Just fantastic players. So those kind of things all added up. But it's also, I brought a lot of passion. You bring a lot of passion and energy. I was highly motivated, and I think that helped as well. I wanted to see my school that I went to be very successful. So I feel like we had the type of success that said, yes, you can build a winning soccer program at Point Park, and it was at a time before we had facilities and everything. So now Jerome Wallstra can recruit there and say, well, I've got Highmark Stadium, that kind of thing. So and don't get me wrong, Jerome is just tremendous coach, and he's a great guy to play for. I think a lot of the kids really respond well to him. So he deserves all the credit for the program taking it to a totally different level. But we started something, and I think that was important thing to be able to get it off the ground. And I think it was a great experience.
Do they get to play in Point Park? Gets to play in Highmark as a home stadium?
Yes.
That's awesome. Good for them.
It's just not a better recruiting tool.
Yeah. It's pretty close too, so I mean that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's a shorter run than running up.
And no incline.
Quick story, John, before I ask a follow-up question. So I've been married 12 years, and when I had proposed to my wife, we went to dinner on the South Side. I was coming up with this idea that I was going to take her up to Mount Washington. I was going to propose to her. And so there's a Catholic church on Mount Washington near one of the lookouts.
St. Mary's.
Yep. And nervous as hell, right? I'm going to ask this girl, to marry me. Got the ring in my pocket. But I don't want her to get too close to the edge on the overlook because, for anyone that's seen it, that's a pretty big drop off, right? And thousands of dollars down the drain. So, and I proposed to her on December 15th. And so it's one of those typical days like today, right? It's a cold, gray, Pittsburgh, December day. And again, arm shaking and sort of doing this. Thankfully she said yes. But yeah, I think of that anytime that I've gone up McCardle Roadway or across Liberty Bridge and up to Mount Washington. So it's funny. I'll have a new, maybe, or at least a secondary thought when I go across there now and think of your guys running back in the day.
Hey, Aaron, we have a new sponsor in 2020.
Yeah, what is that?
It's Manscaped. And have you ever been to the beach or ever been out somewhere and noticed the guy that's wearing literally like a rug, hasn't really taken care of himself?
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty nasty, right? No one wants to see that.
No.
So Manscaped has created a redesigned electric trimmer. And you and I actually both got these in the mail. And their Lawnmower 2.0 has proprietary skin-safe technology. So you won't nick yourself while you're trying to clean up those body hairs that are just a nuisance. Manscaping accidents will finally be a thing of the past. So I think you and I can both give a high five for that.
Absolutely.
And, you don't want to use the same trimmer that you use on your face for other parts of your body, right? That's kind of gross.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do that.
So you can use our promo code OTTL at manscaped.com to get 20% off plus free shipping. So that's OTTL at manscaped.com. You always want to use the right tools for the job. Your body and below the belt will certainly thank you. So that's OTTL at checkout at manscaped.com, and you'll get free shipping and 20% off today.
I wanted to ask about, Aaron obviously working in the college game. You've worked in the college game, high school soccer, and you'd mentioned sort of the competitiveness now of attracting players to the game and at the youth level, right? And I experience that on a yearly basis. There's a whole lot of competition for local players now. And largely, I would say that's probably a good thing, and would encourage parents and family members to be, to do their due diligence in terms of looking at clubs, because there are some clubs that might be a better fit for a young player. I feel like sometimes, though, people want to speak negatively about the high school game. And yes, there are times where if you watch a high school match, it may not necessarily be the best soccer that you've ever seen played. However, having coached in that environment, I've told a few people this, there's a massive opportunity as a coach to teach the game and to have a really significant impact on the players that you're working with. And not to say that doesn't happen in other environments, but I think, in my situation, I mean, we didn't have we didn't have that many cup players or, club players. A lot of these players that we had were, they had really only experienced the rec environment or maybe a little bit of travel with like a local organization. And I just wonder if there's a misconception about high school soccer. And, maybe that's a very Pittsburgh only question. I've heard stories from other people, around the country, but obviously you write about it here locally.
Yeah, well, I write about it locally. I will say Pittsburgh Soccer Now, in terms of our clicks and views and just following, and this is unfortunate, really, when you think about the bigger picture. You would think the Riverhounds would be our main, and we try to make it our focus because it's the professional, the highest level of the game in our area. But the high school stuff is what people follow. It's what really drives our site in terms of numbers and all of those type of things, and just generates interest and talk. And it's just, now I think I don't know if that's common around the country, in other pockets. Now, I was covering the Hounds playoff game in 2015 in New Jersey at Red Bull Arena, And that game was scheduled, I think it was a 5 o'clock kick. And we got there pretty early. We got there about 1:30 or so. And there was a game going on in Red Bull Arena. It was two teams, local teams, New Jersey teams, high school teams. And Red Bull Arena was packed. I mean, it was a lively atmosphere. And now there was a rivalry that goes, I forget the exact two schools, but it's a rivalry that goes back a long, long way, immigrant based, the whole thing. But New Jersey soccer, I mean, obviously it's not. I've never seen anything like it, and at that level, it was really something to see. Now, again, it's like those pockets of places where people are really passionate. Now, when we have the WPIL finals at Highmark Stadium, they've been doing it since 2013. There's you get to that second game on a back-to-back on a Thursday or Friday night, and you got the schools, there's two schools that played earlier, two schools that played after, and there's just a vibe in the stands. You're just not going to get it at any club level at all. And so what I look at, and I wrote about this about a year or two ago, I like to repost the story often, is the story about basically about how high school, playing at the high school level, the kids get to play under some significant pressure situations. They're playing for something. They're playing for their school. They're playing for, and again, this is not to disparage club and those obviously high level opportunities to play, in travel and to do all those things. But it's just something special about the high school game in terms of being able to win for your school, even if you don't get to the finals. Like just the whole experience, the camaraderie, playing for your school with your teammates, seeing those 4 years of those kids grow. And there's big programs. You coached in a smaller program. I mean, there's just a lot of benefits. It's just unfortunate that the game is not in line with FIFA and in line with the rest of the world. And I know the college game struggles a little bit in that area as well, but it's not as much. I will fight for the high school game. I think that obviously those changes need to come, and we'll continue on through my forum, through what I do, to hopefully write stories and chronicle different things that need to be improved. The officiating, the way the rules, the laws of the game, all of those things. There's a lot of things that need to be improved, but obviously some of the things I spoke about just a little while ago, all those positive attributes, I think those are they're real, and I can tell you, my son played at Fox Chapel and had a great 4-year run, and he grew as a player both on his club side, but his high school experiences, bar none. He will tell you that was his most special part of his soccer career.
That's I think it's cool to hear that. Not only with you being a former coach, but just as a dad, right? And I would want the same for my 3 kids as they get a little bit older. John, you'd mentioned something that I thought was really great, and I've had this conversation with some of the coaches that actually played in the Whitfield final here recently, of the laws of the game, the structure of the refereeing and the officiating, and it not being in line with sort of the things that FIFA as a governing body sort of says this is what football or soccer should look like, and that maybe explain, and you don't have to necessarily do a deep dive, but what that actually means. And it was a little eye-opening for me coming into the high school game when I asked some of those initial questions, going, wait a sec, this is a little different. And and you had mentioned sort of even some comparisons with college soccer. The NCAA, obviously, or NAIA, they make the rules in terms of how games are going to look and feel, and number of substitutions and all these different things. And just explain maybe to the listening audience a little bit just what that actually means. And I know we have this sort of cockamamie system of officiating here in Pennsylvania. That is, I've had this conversation with folks not in Pennsylvania, and they look at me and they go, "What in the hell is that?" It's a little bizarre. I won't lie. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been built out of necessity. There's this was done 20 plus years ago when I don't know, they came up with this 3 whistle system where each official has a whistle, and the 2 officials on the side are not true linesmen. They're officiating on the field. They're sort of doing half the job of a linesman, but still kind of serving as a field official. It's just so bizarre. And there's obviously a lot of flaws. The officials are, not a lot of them are not in good physical shape. I mean, they're just having trouble getting up and down the field, and so there's been numbers problems. There's a massive shortage, and it's not just soccer across the board at this level, at the high school level in the PIAA, Pennsylvania's governing body, and that oversees everything. So I don't know where to start, to be honest. I mean, I think I applaud the WPIAL, which is Western Pennsylvania's District 7, for proposing a pilot program, which got rejected by the Pennsylvania PIAA this previous summer, where they were going to go to a 1 whistle system and pilot it during the Whitfield season, and it got rejected. Now, the PIAA's response was, we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and that I understand, and that makes sense. But I don't know. That's a big issue in terms of the game being played where the offside issue is a part of it. Not having the flag, and it's just players are used to it, playing everywhere else they play, and then coming into the high school game have to adjust a bit. It's been frustrating to watch from my standpoint, where I'm covering games and I hear, I could just see the kind of the way the officials have struggled. There was a call, and I know the referee who made the call. There was a call in one of the Whitfield finals where a referee was way on the other side of the field and called a player for, I guess, diving during on a set piece, like going down before the play even took place, and he was way on the other side. And in the high school game, you got to sit out for 5 minutes. It was essentially the best player from the one team came out during the overtime, and obviously, what happened was Quaker Valley ended up scoring a goal to win that match, but that was Deer Lake's player. I think Jason, you're well aware of the situation. I mean,
yeah,
there's just a lot of different scenarios that happened the last few years where it's sort of come to the forefront. I think, officials are always going to be human, and they're going to make errors, and there's going to be issues. It just seems to be compounded with this current situation.
Aaron, I saw your face.
I didn't know that there's 3 whistles on the field with no ARs with flags. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, I know the NCAA has some funky rules that are differ from FIFA, but that's taking it into a completely different realm there. You're totally changing how the game is functionally officiated. Man, that's crazy.
Yeah. And what makes it worse is that you have the 3. Okay, so it's not like the center ref is the center ref the whole game. They have to rotate every. I'm trying to think. I think it's 20 minutes or 25 minutes. Jason, do you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. They're rotating. I don't remember exactly minute wise, but it's close to that. And yeah, you're going to get numerous looks in from some able-bodied and some not so able-bodied officials. That was definitely the experience I had this past season. So
that's probably true of every high school in every state. Officiating is your so you'll get some officials that struggle physically to cover the field, which obviously in soccer is a pretty important piece. of officiating is field coverage. That's why they have fitness tests for the officials at the highest level, even the college level or the professional level. I mean, they got to pass fitness tests just like a player does. So very fascinating. But I'm sure that's it's good that you guys are. Do you is there a way that it can change, or is it just through continued dialogue with? Because I guess you said, I mean, it can't be WPIAL. It has to be the main Pennsylvania governing body. And man, definitely in Ohio. You get some two refereeing systems here in Ohio, but I've never seen the three with whistles. That's crazy.
Yeah, there's believe me, it's a hot topic. I think all sides are trying to, make it, make sure that this gets resolved. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't know how soon it's going to be resolved. I mean, it could be resolved as early as this year. I don't think so. I think that there's too much of an infrastructure issue in terms of the officials would have to be trained. The current officials transitioning into the new system and understanding the laws of the game, they're not. A lot of these guys are guys that officiate other sports. They're not hardcore, and it may be a case in other states. I'm not sure, but a lot of these guys are guys that you'll see on a basketball court or volleyball or whatever, and they're just sort of rent a rep type guys. They all wear the same striped referee shirts, and they take the test they have to take, and they can pass it, and they're good to go. And it's just and this issue has kept other qualified, certified officials who will officiate all the other levels of the club game. They keep a lot of them don't do the high school game, so there's going to have to be that integration and recruitment effort to bring them into the fold. Once they go back, they hopefully can get to their one whistles.
That was my next question. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of qualified FIFA refs or U.S. soccer refs, FIFA maybe not, but U.S. soccer refs in the Western Pennsylvania area, and they aren't interested in doing it.
I don't know what the disparity is between between the PA West, for example, guys that just referee PA West and don't do high school. I mean, there's definitely some crossover. There's some guys that do both, and they deal with it. And there are some that adamantly say, "I will not go near the high school game because of this." And the other thing, the officials will, as a group, often will cite the abuse issue from fans and coaches and as a reason why they don't want why it's hard to recruit more officials. I think, of course, in this society we can do a better job. Everybody can do better in that area, but it's a concern. I mean, that's a concern, but I don't know. I think that we can do better.
In terms of switch gears a little bit, John, from the high school game, the state of soccer overall in the U.S. and a lot of it gets talked about, on social media and the different forums and platforms that are out there. What is your sort of take in terms of where we are as a soccer country, male, female, whatever it may be, and sort of the growing the game, and I sometimes joke about this, but U.S. Soccer has this charge or their mission statement that their goal is to make soccer the preeminent sport here in the States. I don't know if they're doing that. I feel like they're letting us down, and I often say if we had a living, breathing federation, that some of this would actually change and perhaps get better. But from a vantage point where you see a bunch of different sides, right? You're covering the professional game, you're covering the college game, the high school game, and everything in between. What would you say?
Well, and I'm covering that in a market that's certainly a non-traditional soccer market. region. I mean, again, we talked already about all the history of the back and forth and where Pittsburgh has come. And I'm good friends. Actually, one of my college teammates, my roommate, one of my better friends, and we debate this often. That he will say that it's fifth or sixth, and when you talk about all the different where it is in the pecking order in terms of and that's you can't change culture. It's just part of what we already have in our sporting culture is already immense. It's part of it. What I think where soccer, I know this is just my kind of feeling, is like soccer it can continue to grow, continue to go where it's going. Thought that it would be the sport in our nation. I just we need to talk. That would be generations down the road. I think that all the work we're doing now is incremental, and it's part of maybe building the game, growing the game. I mean, I have this site I'm totally devoted to helping better educate the readers to learn ways of the game, because that's where we still are. We're still sitting. I mean, Pittsburgh is Steelers, Pirates, Penguins. Probably not in that order. Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, maybe. Pitt. Baseball, basketball. I'm sorry, football, basketball, those type of things. I mean, I just see soccer is somewhere in that fourth or fifth. In the NHL and the MLS are maybe closer now. Maybe there's you see Atlanta, you see some of these great stories, but I don't know. I just feel like I mean, look at when I look at my site and I would think, well, we've gotten to the Riverhounds have grown so much in this town, and we're just, I mean, the high school game, because of the interest of the players' families and the people in those small communities are excuse me, the clicks and views and following for the high school coverage is 10 times more than what I'm getting for Riverhounds game day coverage. That tells me a lot that it's very provincial. It's very much like right now the broader community as a whole is not thirsty for more soccer information. I'm saying like the broader community. Like there is a reason why our local radio stations refuse to talk about soccer, because they know that once that topic comes on the air, their people are going to stop listening. So these are all hurdles that the soccer world, the community is dealing with. Now, all that being said, we've seen great strides. I think locally, to see the Riverhounds go where they've gone, and they have a supporters group now. The stadium is built to have 5,000, 6,000 fans at the last playoff game. So, and I do think that at the professional level in a market like Pittsburgh, you absolutely have to win. And I think the Riverhounds have shown that the last 2 years. You win, you get, people will come, people will support you. And I think, and the way that they're doing it, they're incrementally building successfully, and now going to have a facility at Montour Run that's going to be at level with a lot of MLS clubs won't even have something like that. Excuse me. They're taking the steps, and they're investing, and they're doing all the right things. They're not trying to just do it all at once. FC Cincinnati put a lot of money up front to get to where they've gotten to, and it's been successful. But I don't know if that's going to be the long term success. But this isn't. Aaron probably knows that area better than I do, but I think Pittsburgh's it's slowly getting there, and I think with success and you get that second, third generation going from the Riverhounds, I think we'll see some success. But I don't know, U.S. soccer to me it's so hard. It's such a big nation. We have such a huge nation, and I think that when you look at the success of other countries that are smaller, but they're more in tune with each other and what's going on, and it's been a huge part of their cultures for century plus now. That's what we're up against as a soccer nation, as far as I'm concerned.
Aaron, you've talked about the success you've had recruiting here in the Pittsburgh area, and that part of that has been with the Riverhounds Development Academy, but other clubs locally, and maybe just speak for a minute about how you've seen the quality of the player maybe evolve and change and adapt, in your time.
Well, I mean, I think John kind of hit the nail on the head when the Riverhounds would come around and start their academy however many years ago that was. It caused everybody else to raise their game, and so I think you got teams, clubs maybe branching out a little bit more, creating more opportunities for players. I mean, it seems like Pittsburgh's a very um, close high school community, that high school sports are followed very, very well. And obviously you mentioned that with the clicks on your site for the high school coverage. But I think as you grow as competitiveness, you got to grow that club soccer scene, and those players have got to get out and play in different regions of the U.S. And I think that's probably been down to maybe competition, more emphasis on training and improving those players in that area. And so, I mean, I think I enjoy coming to Pittsburgh. I think our proximity to Pittsburgh, only being 3 hours away, is a natural fit for us, that you can go a little bit away from home, but you're still close, that you can go home on the weekend, and you've got some quality teams that play in the National League, in the U.S. Soccer National League. You got the Riverhounds now playing in the ECNL, the League Cubs National League. I think that it's fantastic, and I enjoy it. I enjoy seeing the growth, and you talk about the growth of soccer in the U.S., and you were talking about Riverhounds and FC Cincinnati, and the USL Championship, or I guess it's just called the Championship now. Do you feel like, I mean, it's growing like crazy? I mean, you got people buying into that league now you got to pay, what is it, 50 million now or something crazy like that to get into the championship. So it's not like the old days when you were hemorrhaging money. They might be hemorrhaging money now, but it's not for the lack of understanding that they can also make money, because the need is there. How do you see, because I mean, obviously FC Cincinnati was probably a fluke, because they went in there and they had the money, the ownership group had the money, and they just threw it in there and they did it. And in that gradual climb that the Riverhounds are doing, do you see that's a long term, that they have longevity there, that they can keep going? Because I think if we ever get to promotion relegation, and you've got the MLS and you've got the championship and you've got these clubs symbiotically working together, do you see the Riverhounds continuing to grow in that?
I heard, I haven't shared this with anybody, but I had my long discussion with Bob Lilly the other day. First time I've ever heard him say the words MLS in the same sentence as his club, the Riverhounds. And well, we were having this discussion about how, I've got to go back. I started the drawing board now again, because I have 6 or 7 free agents that I probably can't afford to sign, and I have to look at, get back to the drawing board. I mean, I was able to, exercise options for X amount of players, but I couldn't re-sign a Joe Greenspan or well, we don't know about that completely yet. But a Nico Bretso, for example, is a case of someone who did sign with another club. So my point of this is, the Hounds, he's saying, can't wait till, maybe down the road when we are at that level where we can, at this time of the year, I can go out and I can have 15 guys already coming back for next year. They have a decent core coming back for 2020 to start, but they don't have the core that currently that Louisville City has and that Indianapolis have, who are really their main competitors. I mean, obviously there'll be other clubs that'll be shooting for the top this year too, but he's still working with a little bit less budget, but the vision for him to say, hey, maybe down the road. I'd never heard. We put that bed to rest. We put that to rest a number of years ago when the Hounds hit bankruptcy. But fortunately, ownership is key, and having a Tuffy Schallenberger here in Pittsburgh who is able to provide the financial resources. He's not an MLS level ownership, but he's willing to spend the money, invest in the facilities, and lots of the land that towns are playing on actually now own that land at Station Square. So that was pretty significant. In addition to the Montour Junction addition this past year, so there's the Riverhounds. They're building to get bigger, but they're not in a hurry. They want to win now. They have a coach that can win with, it's not say win with little, but I think he can go back out and rebuild a roster and find a lot of gems out there without spending a lot of money. But they have. He's saying he can go out and he's trying to get free agents and this and that. Yeah, I mean these clubs have the resources. I think the USL has positioned itself to bring in markets that are hungry for this sort of thing. I think I'm trying to say, looking around, Birmingham, Nashville's first 2 years, but now they're up to MLS. I mean, obviously Cincinnati in the beginning, but if you look at some of the newer USL markets, hey, I think one of the big things that I've noticed this year is, each year, from year to year, you see a lot of drop. You might see 2 or 3 franchises drop and this and that. I mean, on the Eastern Conference side, Miami replaces Ottawa, and Nashville goes to MLS. That's it. There's no other turnover, and I think this is the first time we're starting to see that this stability is starting to come into play, and I think it has to do with financial stability first and foremost with those franchises, and the fact that the United States, U.S. soccer requirements to be a Division II. It's no longer the Wild Wild West of the NASL. What we're seeing at the Division II level is you have to have a facility that's 5,000 or more. They want that soccer-only facility or soccer-only field. Now, there's still a little bit of battle with teams playing in baseball facilities and things like that, but they're really moving away from that. Louisville City is a perfect example. Played at Slugger Field, and now we'll be moving into a beautiful new facility starting next year. This is the direction that they're going, and that's the exciting part. That's where the growth of soccer is happening. You're starting to see these mid to bigger size markets at the Division II level really pushing to build soccer products that will be here for the long haul, and not what we've seen in the past where, and obviously, Aaron, you probably experienced this as a player 20 some years ago. You were playing in markets where you were probably playing high school stadiums, you're playing minor league baseball stadiums, crappy fields, all that stuff. Whereas now, I think that the bar has been raised a lot higher, and that's where we're going. So, we talk about U.S. soccer and American soccer maybe struggling, but as a whole, to be out, it's not at a point where I don't think, but to have a stronger Division II, I think that's a good thing for U.S. soccer.
No, I think that's amazing. I mean, you hit the nail on the head with the fact that the USL that I played in, is nothing compared to what it is now. I mean, technically it's the same level, but functionally, I mean, the ownership, the money, the travel, the stadiums. I mean, you're right. We played in high school stadiums. We played in minor league baseball stadiums. I mean, I remember playing in stadiums where they couldn't even get the pitcher's mound level, you still have that hump on the field, and even some of the better teams that we played against that were fully professional were playing in high school stadiums, and it's awesome to see the U.S. be able to develop a second tier that can sustain high level soccer and it's trendy now. I went to a game at last year at Nashville SC, and they played in the baseball stadium, but it was done really really well. But it was trendy. You get people, hipsters and trendy people want to go to these games, and it's cool and it's fun, and that's really cool, and it's great for the health of soccer in the U.S. for sure.
John, tell the audience a little bit about Pittsburgh Soccer Now and how people can connect with you and the work that you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, PittsburghSoccerNow.com. We are, as you mentioned very early in our conversation, it's been very fortunate. I started Pittsburgh Soccer Report kind of just as solo, running, just kind of putting my stuff out there. And it is grown to the point now where we have contributors, myself, Mark, if you follow the American soccer scene, and if you've ever followed the Colorado Rapids, we've got Rabbi Mark Goodman is a contributor now with us. He contributes a couple different areas, but a lot with the Riverhounds. But he's done some nice local features on local game, and he'll cover do some pit stuff for us as well. Unique perspective, and I love having totally different perspectives and insights, and just unique, great writer. And Matt Geica, who's the play-by-play announcer for the Riverhounds, and a long-term media member, was with DK Pittsburgh Sports at one time. Fairly well known in our area, also contributes, and it's just a huge help to me with many different things. And then we have just a team of other contributors. I could go on and on. There's a number of people, and I apologize for not including everybody, but we have a lot of people who are willing to help in the labor of love. It's hard, it's tough, right? I mean, we have some sponsorship with our high school coverage here and there, but yeah, no, people are doing it to. I feel really good about the talented group of people who contribute, and also photographers. We've had a couple of photographers that have contributed to our site. Ed Thompson, namely, has been prominent, probably the most prominent photographer. He does a lot of our high school stuff. He does some really good work. So I'm really proud of where it's gotten to, and we're going, continue to cover all areas of the game in the Pittsburgh area, aspects, from the Riverhounds all the way down to the youth level. Colleges, it's been exciting this year was, having Pitt, the women's and men's programs grow to the point where, we've got two coaches who have won national championships elsewhere, and we're, having them, in addition to having the Bob Lilly in our soccer region. I think it's really elevated, the type of teams that we've been covering. So yeah, really, that's pretty much what we've been doing. A little bit more features, and I'm very excited about a project coming up. And I really haven't talked much about it with anybody outside, but I will just say this: it's a book project. And it's about a significant Pittsburgh Riverhounds moment, but it's going to be a book that will be more about the understory, is kind of the ups and downs and the struggles and exciting moments for a second division, third division soccer in our region, and how it's formed over the past 7 years since the addition of Highmark Stadium. So that's kind of the theme of it. So I have a lot of interviews to do in the next probably month and a half, and to see where it goes as a narrative.
I think that's awesome, and John, a big fan of your work, and I contribute to those clicks on the website. So thank you so much for coming on the latest episode of the On the Touchline podcast, and I'll be sure to link to the website and your Twitter handle and how people can connect with you and follow along with all the good work you're doing. But thanks again.
Appreciate having me.
A big shout out to John Krysinsky for coming on the latest episode of the On the Touchline podcast with Aaron Rodgers and I. John, thank you so much. That was a really enjoyable chat that we had a few weeks back, and glad that we're able to share it out with the audience. And folks, give John a follow on social media and check out what Pittsburgh Soccer Now is doing here in the local Pittsburgh community when it comes to covering the game that we all love. Before we go, don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast. So hit the pause button, go there now, and leave us a 5-star rating, a brief review, and help more and more in the soccer community find out about this show. Also, we have a new partner in 2020, and that is Manscaped. So if you go to manscaped.com and a link in the show notes of how to get there, you can save 20% on your next order by using the promo code OTTL. It'll also get you free shipping. So guys, you want to go and check that one out while you're there. And last but not least, reach out to Aaron and I on social media, active on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find us at Soccer Coach JB for me and at Ohio Soccer Coach for Aaron. Guys, we'll catch you next Wednesday. Go and enjoy the FA Cup and a lot of the other football that's happening this weekend. And we'll be back in your feed really, really soon. Until next time, this has been the On the Touchline podcast.